information to link into the chat. Um, so Adam, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you're all about, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Do you mind if I share my screen? I've got a presentation, a short presentation.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Yes. So my name is Adam Juno. I work at a design agency called Good Creative here in Eugene, Oregon. We specialize in branding, product packaging, web design systems, marketing strategy, and we work with nonprofit organizations and small businesses. I myself run a nonprofit, though it is a side project right now, but we are focused on permaculture, food forests, and agri-hood concepts. Which is an interesting topic kind of related to getting your neighborhood together to bring in food forest and a neighborhood of agri people. So this in particular little presentation is about branding, and more specifically consistent branding. It really is about being consistent, and I don't know where all of your backgrounds or professional lives lie. So I will speak to both the business side of things and also the nonprofit side of things. So use those kind of interchangeably. But so consistent branding is a way to differentiate your organization from competitors or other organizations, and products and services that you may be working with, or programs. They have a limited life cycle, but the brand or your organization can last for a really long time, or a lifetime. One really important thing for consistent branding, especially for nonprofits, is it plays a huge factor in grant decision making when you're presenting yourself to philanthropic organizations. It matters quite a bit. So what is a brand exactly? Is it a logo, a tagline, a product? The answer is yes, and it's really a design language about your storytelling and the experience, all of these things working as a cohesive unit together. This evokes a feeling with the people you're trying to reach, and really influences their engagement with your brand, and tries to get people to either donate or participate. And honestly, whether you've thought about it or not, whatever organization or company or small business you're a part of, you do have a brand. Even if you don't have a logo or anything like that, you have a brand, and it's kind of up to you to direct that to be beneficial. All of these things on the left-hand side are some of, but not all of, the things that are touch points for your brand. So someone might come across your company or your organization in an email or by word of mouth or social media, and you really want all of that to be a unified experience for people. That's going to really shape it. And so, again, nothing is really unbranded. This company is called Brandless, and even though they have a sort of generic vibe, they still, that is their brand. But I think really the most important thing is, if you have an inconsistent visual identity for your organization or company, is it sloppy? Is that inconsistency confusing for people? And are those attributes that you want associated with your organization, does that convert sales or hearts and minds to be sloppy, inconsistent, or confusing? Yes. So what branding is not is kind of like, hey, I took this picture, I really like it. Can you use this kind of thing? Like, how does that align with the values of the organization? And definitely don't take advice from your nephew who likes frogs and like, oh, you know what, we should have our, home business or our home marketing company be a frog company. It's not really, doesn't really align with that or any of your values or missions. More specifically, why is consistency important? It builds trust, really, for whoever you're trying to reach. People are very emotional and want to have trust with anybody they're working with and any organization. It also allows for not having to restart a new campaign or program. If you've got a defined and consistent organizational brand, then every program you're working on isn't going to have to be started from scratch. People generally need to see a brand or a logo multiple times before they kind of get it, and consistency builds long-term loyalty. For nonprofits specifically, we're kind of talking about brand equity, though. It's more than just a logo. It's more than just a program or a flyer that you have. It's about storytelling and owning that storytelling, and how is that storytelling consistent across each touch point, and how do people connect? And quite frankly, the more trust you build, the more donations you're going to get. And speaking specifically to nonprofits, large grant organizations really do see that and take note of your commitment. And what that is really your commitment to your organization. I can't tell you how many times we've worked with nonprofits on like a website and a flyer and business cards and signage for their building, and they come back to us and they say, we got this huge grant, and it was in large part because of the consistent visual identity that we provided for them. And so to get to that point, a brand guideline is something that is given to anybody that you work with, anybody that's going to be utilizing your brand, whether it be affiliate organizations or a freelance designer or another organization that you're partnering with. It's a Bible, a brand Bible that can be shared with anybody so that your brand is represented consistently across the board. Here's some quick, really super quick practical applications, because I want to keep it tight. Really, when starting on this road to a consistent brand, you really want to have a conversation internally about, what is the mission and vision? What are the goals of the organization? And what are some immediate tactics to get to that? Not everybody and not every organization has the branding or marketing budget that might, generate a giant campaign, but consistency can be applied at any budget. Even if you have, even if your nephew did design your logo, use that across the board for everything and pick the same logo, same fonts, same colors, and make sure that all of that is going to be the same, no matter where you're presenting. Even if it's a subtle difference, like a slight color difference or a slightly different font, it's not something that someone's going to pick up immediately, but it's just that, it's that continuous consistency in building trust for people and them recognizing it across the board. Oftentimes nonprofits very much do have a starting point where the founder or the founding group or the board of directors has some stake in what they're doing, but that's not the case always. And I find it really important to remember that the people that you're serving or your customers aren't necessarily in your shoes. And so taking off your shoes to be able to allow people to connect with your organization is really important. And then, building a brand guideline, establishing a North Star. This is kind of also what not to do. And so that helps other organizations when they're working with you as well. And it's not just knowing it for yourself or having your C-suite or board having this knowledge. It's really about getting everyone on board. Staff, volunteers, partner organizations. And again, that's part of why having a brand guideline or brand Bible is really important. It makes scaling your organization or business super efficient rather than this kind of like clunky thing. And so everyone can move in the same unison. And so, to wrap it up, why does branding matter? It helps you stand out. It increases the perceived value of your organization. It connects with your people emotionally. It boosts your credibility. You are the first in mind when other organizations are wanting to work with somebody or find a partner, and it motivates donations and participation and cements customer loyalty and retention. Here are some resources that I just kind of put in there. If anybody is in this phase of looking for ways to increase and make their brand or organization consistent, I can share these links with Sydney, and she can share it amongst the group if you feel. But yeah, so that's it in short. But if anybody has any questions relating to nonprofits or small businesses or food agriculture specifically, I'm more than happy to answer.
Thanks, Adam. Do we have any questions that have bubbled up for folks? Part of why I brought Adam on here was so many of you work with small packaged food businesses within and around your organizations, or you as organizations yourselves are starting to figure out how you want to talk to larger communities. So I thought this presentation might be interesting. Do we have any folks that have any questions?
I guess I have a quick question, and I don't know if it's answerable, but I have a few new food businesses in my kitchen that their labels are like cringeworthy, and I'm trying to find like kind and delicate ways to give some pointers and things. Adam, what would be like, is there a price to like consult a first pass consult with a food-based tenant that doesn't have a lot of funds, but is there sort of a intro kind of fee to expect, or is it thousands of dollars to get a label going for you guys?
It is definitely not thousands of dollars, and we do work on a sliding scale. So I'm personally really passionate about food and local agriculture and food businesses. Send me an email and we can talk about it, but I'd also be happy to just give an introductory kind of discovery call on the house kind of thing, just to kind of understand where they're at and where you're at and understanding your model and stuff.
Great, thanks. I will. I'll send a couple people your way. And
sure.
Yeah, thanks.
And Adam, I will be reaching out to you as well.
Cool.
Just need some kind of branding, naming, ideation,
yeah,
kind of stuff. So I'll be reaching out to you as well.
Absolutely, sure.
Shelley, it looks like you had a question.
Yeah, so we're a for-profit that has been running a local food marketplace style website for a couple of years. And one thing I've found is we haven't had the time or put the resources into updating that website since like 2020. So we're seeing like the same thing, and our customers are seeing the same thing. So I just wanted to ask what level of prioritization you would put on keeping your website fresh and updated, and what the customer response or lack thereof would be.
That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on if you're able to sort of track the metrics of how many people are viewing your site, or if you're getting referrals from that, and if people are like consistently asking for new stuff. I would generally say keeping it pretty updated is good practice, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is your participation in it is continuing this movement of building something, and an easy way to be updating it regularly is to have a semi-regular blog where you talk frankly about your organization, and speak to whomever is reading it from a perspective of, this is the way that we do it, and this is like using keywords to attract people from elsewhere so that they find your blog, and then from that find your website as well. Yeah, so I would say at the very least participating in your own website from that perspective, and then updating certain pages as it comes along, and when appropriate. I hope that does that help?
Yeah, definitely. That's
Mm.
Do we have any other questions out there?
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Kristen. I know we've had a lot of folks. Sorry for the background noise, but that have talked about marketing and design and branding that really converts to sales. And so I hear you saying like conveying your values is super important, like developing that trust. But I'm also curious if your company consults on that specific level of maybe diving in with a client to see where they're at in terms of what marketing they've tried, where they're at with their branding, and kind of give them some pointers on sales conversion.
Yes. So part of our process is, discovering where you're at and where you've been and where you'd like to go. And, for us to understand that is going to result in better outcomes of whatever it is that you need done. So yes, we do offer consultation, and this is offered to anybody here. We do free discovery calls. So anybody that would be interested in at least understanding what that would include, please feel free to send me an email.
What other questions do we have? Adam, I think you're going to be getting a lot of emails.
Okay, that's totally fine. That's totally fine.
I
Yeah.
saw a lot of smiles around the room.
Cool.
I think there'll be a lot of follow-up for you after this call. Do we have any other questions for Adam while we have him on the call? Adam, thank you for taking the time to talk to
Totally.
us and introduce yourself and introduce what you do. And I appreciate that you tailored it to, the communication piece around nonprofits and funding. I think probably resonates for a lot of us. Not all of us are nonprofits, but many of us are.
Sure.
And probably all of us are looking for funding in some way. So I really appreciate that from you.
Absolutely.
You're welcome to stay on the call and listen to the rest of this if you'd like to. You're also welcome
Cool.
to fly and be free if that's how your day needs to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here, and good luck with everybody's journey.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right. Next up, we have the inimitable Kim Johnson talking about rural shared commercial kitchen spaces, how they work. She's going to go right into the nuts and bolts of how they work, how she's charging, how she's managing the space. We have such a great resource here in Kim, and I'm so excited to have her share with you.
It's
All right, Kim.
Thanks for that introduction. And also thanks for bringing Adam on. That was actually awesome. And so too bad we don't have like a giant pot of money, like a grant that we could apply for so that everybody could access a resource like that. But it sounds like they're workable. So thanks for that.
You're welcome. And actually, just to put a pin on that, we do work with nonprofits and getting grant funding too. So being written into grants is something that is a possibility. So just putting that out there.
Great news. Yeah, I could almost see how a food hub, like my ideal would be to have a fund that I can pass on to new food businesses that need some help getting started on their label. Because I know that when I was a small food business, I did not have money to pay for. I did it myself and I spent hours and I didn't know this and that, but a lot of folks just don't have the funds to prioritize in that direction. So it sounds like Adam is going to be an awesome asset for a lot of us. So thanks. Okay, so I am not doing this correctly at all. There we go. Okay, can you see?
We can see it.
Yay. Okay, so Bohemia Food Hub. The first thing I want to do, a lot of folks have visited my space, but for those who haven't, I thought it would be useful to just give a pass because it's not just a building. Like this is our food hub. This is where the kitchen is located in this building. But like we have this whole, there we go. We have this whole complex where it's like this thing over here is a is a blacksmith and iron shop. And this thing here is our Coast Fork Farm Stand. It's a natural grocery store. And here, over here is our food trucks. And this is relevant because one of the reasons that Bohemia Food Hub works so well is that we've diversified our income streams. And so having not just relying on a single tenant in the kitchen or two tenants in the kitchen, it's this whole package, like the blissful package makes it all work. So having 5 food trucks and a couple of retail storefronts independent of the actual Bohemia Food Hub and the kitchen and the food business incubator really helps us not totally rely on grant funds to keep this thing afloat. And so that takes us like right to, let's see, how do we, there we are. So speaking of branding, like we now have our own sign, like this sign just went up a month ago. And this was one of the most exciting moments because for 5-7 years, we've just been the butterfly building in town and nobody has really understood what is going on in there. So I'm just gonna breeze through this and just give you kind of a picture. This is just this morning. Actually, it's right now as we speak. And it's like, it's so incredible to watch. So this is within the kitchen. This is 1, 2, 3 different businesses operating in tandem, in parallel. One of the reasons that the kitchen works so well is that we have these different zones that allow for multiple tenants to operate at the same time. And so to give you a sense, like this is our bottling zone, and it's also a flex zone. It's just another production zone, but it also houses our kettle because we have 3 or 4 different tenants that have a bottled product and they use the kettle to get their bits in the bottles and things. And then this is a bake zone that is sort of like our newest area. Giant mixers, bunch of pans, tables, stove, and then our giant walk-in, it's called what is it called? A rack oven. So it's a double rack oven. It takes 2 giant speed racks and you can just get so many things done at once. And then we have this giant production zone that can be rented the whole thing or in half. So in this particular case, we have 1 tenant rented this side today and the other tenant rented the other side. We have drops all over the place. And, you know, this is part of what makes the kitchen work so well is that it does have multiple zones for folks to operate at the same time. So it's not like, oh, shucks, I didn't get my ideal time slot from 9 to whatever. Well, there's 3 opportunities to get that ideal time slot every day. Okay, so that was kind of a picture of the kitchen. And this is the stuff that Sydney really wanted me to talk about. So I'm gonna spend time talking about these particular items. Organization, most of you know that we just incorporated Bohemia Food Hub into a nonprofit. So we've been operating as a for-profit for the whole time, 5 or 7 years or so. And as of last year, we are formally a nonprofit. And the reason that I transitioned to a nonprofit is because this piece that you see with the kitchen, that all works super well as a for-profit. I can be the landlord all day long for storefront tenants and food truck tenants, but we started bringing in a lot of programmatic work, and we work with our local immigrant community. We work with the high school kids. We're doing a lot of like entrepreneurial mentorship stuff. And so all of that programmatic stuff that we started down the road of kind of tipped us into this place where there's a lot of funding out there for us to leverage, and empowering this project to be its own autonomous 501c3 ultimately gives us a lot more, empowerment to go after some of these monies and not have to like organize all kinds of partnerships or fiscal sponsors, which we did that for a minute. We did lean on partnerships to go after some of this money, and that was fine, but it didn't always, it was a little messy sometimes. And so we've just assumed this space after kind of riding the fence for a few years, because I really wasn't sure that we wanted to be another nonprofit. The idea was that maybe we just partner with all the dang nonprofits or other nonprofits. And but it's just, for us, the programmatic piece and kind of the social, the mission-based work that we're doing at Bohemia made it feel like it's a perfect fit. Like we are now in this space where we are a nonprofit entity. So that is how we are. Staff time is, right now I have funding to hire 2 part-time staff, and we will in the future. Probably by the end of this year, we'll hire more me's and I can kind of delegate. But right now, and it has been for 5 years, me running the show. And by me running the show, that means that like I'm onboarding the tenants and I'm doing the orientations, and I'm kind of like, there's maybe 60% of the folks that I talk to actually finally on board in the kitchen. So some folks, I'm just like spending an hour or 2 talking to them about their business and like what we have, but maybe they're not there yet. So, it's a lot. It's maybe anywhere between 20 and 40 hours a week I'm spending on the nuts and bolts of running the show. And then writing grants and developing the spaces, etc. So staff time right now, I mean, it is essentially a full-time person, but it's probably a full-time person and 2 part-time people would be my ideal with what Bohemia Food Hub has going on right now. And we have a rock star rare intern who's actually on this call right now, Carly. I am so excited to work with her. We had a rare intern last year. It went a little sideways. So I have a feeling that this year it's just going to be tremendous to have just some extra help so that I can actually learn how also to like let some of it go. Because when you're kind of the champion of a project, it's like, but it's all mine. Like, how do no, I'll help you with that, so I'm going to try really hard this year there's so many things that are like packaged up now that I can take off my plate and just put it over here. Like, I don't need to onboard the new tenants, for Pete's sake. So those are, I'm really thrilled to have, to be moving in this direction over the next year to A, work with the rare intern, Carly, and then B, hire 2 part-time staff and start kind of like expanding that capacity here at the Food Hub. Like, we're ready now. I probably thought I was ready 2 years ago for helpers, but I probably really actually wasn't ready. Like, all the pieces weren't in place. And that kind of brings up, I talked to Sydney about one of the things that's happening right now is that we are in our 2nd round of ROI. And so we have the like beauty of Kristen Monahan's team as our like TA and helper team. And they're just magical. And they're working on our kitchen manual right now. Like, it's the funny thing about the Food Hub is that this thing just took off, and like catching up with it has been the challenge. And so I don't have a kitchen manual. I don't have like a printable agreement. It's all kind of like real casual and between the tenant and I, and it's been working out fine, but we really need to get those kind of ducks in a row so that when I do hand over the reins for onboarding new tenants, and rightly so, when new tenants come in, that there's this real tangible, like, manual list of expectations and rules and like all the different categories. And this is how you work this machine. And it's just this like beautiful master document for Bohemia Food Hub that I am so thrilled to share when it is complete. Because if I only would have had a template document to work with, that would have been, it would have just taken so much of the headache out of that process. Like, what does need to be included in a kitchen manual when you're running a Food Hub, a shared commercial kitchen space? So that piece is in the works and hopefully drops by the end of the summer. Stay tuned for it. let's see, I'm just blazing through these things. Storage, I'm blazing through because I have my financials that I really want to share with you guys. That is like, it's very useful to see what the numbers actually look like. So storage is a piece that like you can't underestimate the need for storage. I tell this to everybody and anybody that's about to build themselves a food hub. And, you know, we have a rural food hub, but like 90% of my tenants are from Eugene. So it's like, yes, we are a rural food hub, but we're also, you know, serving quite a range of an area. So the storage is about half of my kitchen is storage. And you can actually see there's pallet racking. So I have the advantage of tall ceilings, and I bought a forklift recently. So this pallet racking, and then the other unit of measure is metro racks, which I don't know if you can see those back there, but it's just a basic metro rack. Those are my two units of measure. Like I realized it needs to be consistent and uniform. So a metro rack, I charge $25 for that amount of storage per month, and a pallet, I charge $40 a month for that amount of space of storage. And it allows me to like really monetize my storage, because before it was like a shelf here and this like weird shaped thing here. So I've actually transitioned to, I purchase metro racks whenever they go on sale at Costco. I supply them to the tenant, and then it is all the same shape and size. I'm able to charge, it's clear. So storage of my 3,000 square foot kitchen, storage is about half of that space. And so you just, like I said, can't underestimate how much space to delegate for storage. Cost for use is like $15 an hour is pretty much what I do. Maybe it's like some areas it's $12 an hour. There's certain areas that don't have giant pieces of equipment that maybe it's just a table or two that a tenant needs to use. And in those kind of cases, I'll call those flex zones, and I'll charge $12 an hour for those kind of spaces, because there's just really low wear and tear on equipment or draw on utilities. So that's still something I'm kind of trying to work out the detail of, like, how much does this space cost versus that space? But it's basically between 12 and 15 an hour. The cost for use, and this kind of like dovetails with my scheduling platform that I use. So cost for other costs. I mean, I use this program called the Food Corridor, and it is, I'm not going to bother. I was going to share my screen about it, but it is a beautiful program. It was referred to me by Portland Mercado. It is a program that they used, and I think they actually consulted with the developer. It is designed specifically for shared use commercial kitchens. And so it's like, it couldn't be more ideal of a platform to use. At first I was like, ooh, that's kind of spendy, because it's maybe 2,000 or 3,000 for the year. And then I realized you could do like kind of different level plans. And so you can have the Food Corridor actually manage all of your scheduling and your billing. And that's like the next level. So I just tipped into that space. Before that, I was just like using it as a scheduling platform. So people could schedule this zone, or this zone. And they could also schedule, I want to reserve this piece of equipment when I'm in this zone. So you can upload all your equipment, and your tenants can really specifically not only reserve the areas of your kitchen, but pieces of equipment that they need to use. And so that was all a great way to start it out. And it was maybe $30-$50 a month at that level. And then I just tipped it into the place where, okay, now how about y'all manage my billing as well? And so the billing is tied directly to the booking. So if you book 4 hours on Saturday, at the end of your scheduled time in the kitchen, it will automatically bill you for that time. And so, you know, that's like the next tier that costs me like $200. It's per tenant. So now I have 8 tenants. And so it makes economical sense for me. It also keeps it tidy. So I'm like managing 2 or 3 or 4 checks a month, and 2 or 3 or 4 tenants is one thing, but now I have 8 tenants, and I'm not like I'm not a bookkeeper. And so that is not my strength. And so I actually started leaning on the food corridor to manage that piece for me. Okay, I blazed through all that. How about I stop for a second, and before I move on to the financials, does anybody have any questions about those specific items?
I love it. I mean,
Cool.
and Sydney would understand a little bit more why I love it, but I love just the overall concept, being a hub, but you brought in the entrepreneurship. You've definitely been there long enough to be tested. Okay. And you got a couple of badges on your shoulders or arm or such. You're a veteran. So I like that. The other thing was, and I think you answered it, the corridor is kind of scheduling. It's a software program.
That's right. Yeah, it's online. I think their phone app isn't as robust as the online, but it's a great app. You can check it out. The actual founder walked me through a demo. So like they helped me. It's like so much hand holding to get yourself. Yeah,
Okay.
it's incredible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I have one more question, maybe one more for sure. Because when I heard Bohemia, it's like, okay, and I Googled it and okay, did a little research. And then my question is, why or how did the name Bohemia Food Hub come online? Because demographic or whatever, but what's a little bit of the history behind that?
Thanks for asking that. That's awesome question that I never get asked. But people often mistakenly call it the Bohemian Food Hub, which is not what it's called. It's called Bohemia Food Hub. And the reason why is because our town used to be called Bohemia. Before it was Cottage Grove, it was called Bohemia, which I love. I love that was the name of our town, and I wish we could reclaim that. The park across the street, we have a giant park development right across the street. It's called Bohemia Park. Our mines, it's like a old gold mining area. The mines are called Bohemia Mines, and so it's just kind of a nod to the heritage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I love it. I love it. But yeah, thank you for what you guys know. Where are you at again?
Cottage Grove, it's 30 miles south of Eugene.
Eugene, okay.
Right on the I-5 corridor. So
yeah, very familiar with it. Might come out there and make a visit.
You definitely should. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Yep.
We have a couple of questions in the chat. We've got one from Aaron about multiple tenants and 3-basin sinks, asking, do you need a 3-basin sink for each tenant, or are they able to share? And then there was one from Shin asking if there was a minimum number of hours that you required from tenants before you would allow them to join or use the facilities.
Sure, I'm gonna take that last one first. No minimum. I just had somebody come in and process lard for face soap or lotion or something. It was just a couple hours and that was fine by me. So yeah, no minimum. And then yeah, the sinks. So that is a bottleneck. We have right now, I just haven't like pulled the trigger on a dishwasher situation yet. I don't know if y'all know, but like dishwashers to buy are $20,000. That is a very difficult sum of money for me to spend on cleaning dirty dishes. And it also is sterilizing bottles, which is great. And the more bottling tenants we have, I'm like, okay, maybe, but you can also rent the things for a couple $100 a month. So we haven't moved on the dishwasher yet. So we just do analog dishwashing, 3-bay sinks. And that's been fine. Nobody really complains. Like I used to have a food business here. We washed everything by hand, no biggie, right? It's just part of what you do. The air conditioner unit is right above the dishwasher. So it's actually kind of blissful this time of year to just go wash some dishes. But we have two areas with sinks. I haven't developed the second area. In the bottling zone, we have just a single basin sink. And then over on the other side, we have the 3-bay sink. And so what I intend to do in the bottling zone is put another 3-bay sink there, probably pull the trigger on a dishwasher on the main sink. And then we have one more area that I actually plumbed in anticipation that like, do we need a third sink? I don't know. But I think what happens right now is that the tenants, we have three in house right now, and they just kind of like talk amongst themselves about like, hey, I'm gonna do my dish shift now. It's kind of cool because it forces people to communicate and collaborate and be nice to each other. And so they're, it forces, I don't know, everybody organizes and it works out, even when it's a full house like today. So, but if you can get more than one sink in there, if you have multiple zones, that's the ideal.
So it's not mandatory. I guess that was my question too. Is it like, so it sounds like it's not mandatory from like ODA standards or whatever to have, each person in there have a sink. So we have a 3 basin sink now, and we have another one that we can buy, or we have a really cool one single sink that has a countertop and cabinet space under it that we can buy for that space too. So sounds like the 3 basin sink is probably a better option.
Yeah, for sure. Because, ODA doesn't require each tenant to have their own sink. But what happens here is that like, especially like everybody has their own nuances around dishwashing. And so like when I had a food business, I'm certainly not going to follow up on someone else's like dishwater and sink area to go and wash mine. I'm going to wait until they've totally reset the dish area, and then I will begin, is like how I would like how I would hope that things go as a tenant. And so, you know what I mean? Like not everybody, we say that the dish is your last sink, right? And like, not everybody that comes in as a food manufacturer has worked in a kitchen before. I surely didn't. And so I didn't know, you don't know what you don't know. And so there's just like, there's etiquette around sinks that, when you're done, everything is like reset and ready to go for the next tenant. And so it's not like because you have wash, rinse, sterilize. And so it's not like you'd come in after someone else and just keep their waters in there, and keep using the wash, rinse, sanitize. It's like reset the whole thing for your operation, if that makes sense. And ODA requires a 3 bay sink. They require wash, rinse, sanitize. So that single basin sink that you have, like that's basically a hand wash sink. Or you're doing your veggie wash, which needs, certain drains. Like you definitely lean on ODA for your sink requirements, because I learned so much when I licensed this kitchen way back. And it's not just about sinks. Like 3 bay sink is important, but also, is it a direct drain or an indirect drain? Do you need a floor sink? Do you need a mop sink? And so those are all different categories. And if you're a commissary kitchen, you need a mop sink. If you're a food processing kitchen, you don't. So you know what I mean? It's like, depending on what kind of licenses, what ways you want your kitchen to be licensable depends on those different sink requirements. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it sounds like the 3, yes, I just sent you an email actually, so we can chat about it later sometime, but that was super helpful.
Cool. I look forward to seeing you again, Erin.
Yeah.
There's a question from Ken about organizing smallwares and rentals. How do you solve smallwares organization, which Kim has a very brilliant way of doing it. And then there's one from Caitlin about tenants having a difficult time acquiring licensing.
Okay, let me take the first one. So smallwares, I'll just take you to it because it's right here. So yeah, I call it a smallwares library. And I have these, I don't know if you can see very well. I have these these metros. There's like 6 of them. And on those metros, I have, anything from bus tubs to leftover plastic wrap, a whole thing of Cambros, which any of you who has ever had a food business and purchased a Cambro, those things are not cheap. I remember it was like a indicator of how successful my business was like how many Cambros I had acquired. And so a lot of these things, it's like onesie twosies, but it's not cheap. And so when you're a business starting out, if you can actually have access to all of that, which we do, we're able to provide all kinds of like baking pans and this and that. I have not mastered, although it looks really nice on the metros, I have not mastered like what is the mechanism for lending that stuff out? Like, is it a library? Is it like a card catalog? That sounds really analog, but what is the way that we keep it organized? We have it inventoried. Right now, we don't have a lot of tenants using it. And so they use it and then they put it back where it was. So this is not something I've mastered yet. Did I answer the question?
I think so. Ken, did that cover what you wanted to hear?
It did, thank you.
Okay. And then difficulty licensing. Tell me more about that, Caitlin.
Sorry, I'm not in an easy place to join. But yeah, we've had tenants that are just getting their food business started, and typically they'll need a food processing license. And we've just run into some challenges helping to get them that food processing license, and then just working with ODA on what they need. So I'm wondering if you have run into that at all?
We have never run into a problem. That's why I'm wondering, what is it about? Is it about the kitchen, or is it about the particular person's business and what they're trying to do? Is it an acid? Is it some fermented thing, or do you know what it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think ours is more on the particular person's business and the fact that our kitchen was not designed as a rental kitchen. So there's some nuances there and like where they can store stuff. But maybe we're just working with like people who are just getting started. And so they're going and getting their food processing license, and it's taking, up to 6 months for folks to get that licensing. And they run into a lot of unexpected like costs and challenges figuring out what they need and how to get it.
Weird. So we have the beauty, like our ODA person down here is Jeff Green, and he is a rock star. He has been with me since I was a food manufacturer. He is for the people. He is so easy. He knows our kitchen. So basically anybody new that comes in, I just connect the two. That's the first step that happens, is I need to connect you with Jeff Green because you need to get your license. Within a week's time, he meets them here at the kitchen, and they have a license at the end of that meeting. So it's like within 7 days of meeting somebody new in the kitchen, they have their license here in Lane County. And which is vastly different from the story you're telling. So
That's amazing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I wonder if it's inspector based. Like, I wonder if it's just, who knows, like overworked, or we just are really lucky and I underestimated that. What couple things, like if you're doing any kind of juice thing or fish thing, you have to have a HACCP license. That is a whole can of worms. That's a whole nother thing. And so if it's anything like that, it's going to trigger a whole bunch of extra. Fermented stuff, like my inspector has had to learn a lot, because I have fermented hot sauce, I have fire cider, and now I have pickled onions, and I have fresh salsa in the kitchen. And so all of those products require pH levels to be monitored, but my inspector basically teaches the person what they need to do and what he wants them to be successful. It's not like a test and, oh, you failed it. It's this is what you're going to need to do, and this is how you need to do it. And so make sure you're doing that. And then the other beauty is that we have like other folks in the kitchen, like Sean Winter, who's like light years ahead on all of that. And so I'm able to point people in his direction and say, if you need to know anything about pH and the meter and what you need to buy, Sean is there to help you. So those are some bits, but it's like 6 months seems outrageous.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And it could be too, Kim, like you said, a lot of it depends on your past experience. If you come in as a novice or as a new business with no past history, it's a learning curve. And if you have some either retail, manufacturing experience or whatever, you're pretty much ahead of the curve, and they understand that, and they they really work with you to expedite some of those issues much more readily, because it is a safety issue in those things. So I would agree.
Thanks, Willie. I think you're exactly right too. And the other thing is that our kitchen has been licensed for 7 years.
Yeah.
And so it's like the inspector doesn't even have to come and inspect the kitchen anymore.
Right.
So it's, that piece is like 80% of it's done. It's just a conversation with the tenant and their specific process. So yeah, hopefully, Caitlin, once you get some traction in the kitchen, that some of those pieces will be worked through. But I also wonder if you have an inspector that's just maybe overloaded and needs a helper. Maybe you should encourage ODA to hire a helper.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
thank you.
definitely have an inspector, an ODA inspector over here in the North Coast that's overloaded. That I think is the main problem.
Yeah, that's too bad. Yeah, it's like I really underestimate the glory of like somebody has an idea and a week later they can get started. Like a week later they can have a license and be off and running. So I'll give a shout out to our inspector, thanking him for being so accessible.
Kim, how long did you say he's been doing that work in your region?
I mean, since I was a food manufacturer, which was eons ago, 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's an underlying culture of no that happens when people don't have the experience working with businesses or get too many challenging things. But then also we're getting a lot more no at the state level because of the complications around. So that's an interesting thing. I think that it's so good to know that you have that relationship because we can point to it as, yes, this is possible.
Yeah, and it's like, and with all types of businesses too, from like we have had all of those nuanced businesses like juicing, which requires its own HACCP. I had fish in my sushi that I had to have a HACCP. The fermented stuff, fire cider, how do we handle that? It's like there were all these question marks, and rather than no, you can't do that, it was like, oh, how can you do that? And that's Jeff's approach to it. Like, yeah, he's a gem. All right, moving on.
There's a couple of questions about CBD and alcohol manufacturing.
Okay. Let's see. CBD is no problem. It's basically a supplement, so no problem. There are some, let's see, you have to it's like you have to buy it from a regulated this and that or a licensed certified such and so. It's like you have to make sure that like what you're buying is actually CBD, and you have to show that it's certified CBD. So you're not like, oh no, really it's CBD. Oops, it wasn't. And so there's that. But like, so long as you have those checks and balances in place, which are their own certifier, like it's not ODA, it's like somebody in their own, area, making sure that that's all legit, then it's just another ingredient in a kitchen, the same as flour. So no problem with CBD at all. Alcohol, same, it's just an ingredient. It's when you get into the THC or psilocybin or something, like nobody could come in here and make mushroom chocolates or THC chocolates or whatever. Like you have to have your own completely isolated, independent facility to do any of that kind of activity. But CBD, not a problem.
You want to move on to the next section of your
Sure.
presentation, and I think we'll pick up a few more questions.
Okay, what kind of time do I have?
It is about 1:56 right now, and we close out at 2:30. So
Partnerships, because you mentioned it, and because like I can't stress enough, like we've come as far as we have because I connect with so many folks. Like I love the network that we've created here, that Sydney and Lauren have created here specifically, but throughout Oregon, the food systems folks are a rad bunch of folks, right? And so it's like, oh, we're all buddies and we share and we talk to each other. It's like we want to hang out and go to the beach and stuff like this. Like, I can't tell you, like, my success is, or the success of Bohemia Food Hub is dependent on this like whole bunch of folks that like we collaborate and work together, and we're not just kind of like this isolated pod over here. Like I'm way out there, and I talk to folks and I lean on folks. And so rural development initiatives is like, they were the first folks that I collaborated with. Amy House is my person. She's actually on my board now. She taught me how to write grants. Like she collaborates, she helped leverage, she helped organize me. Like, I never knew what TA was, but RDI and Amy House, like without that initial kind of hand holding with TA, with technical assistance, I wouldn't have gotten where I have with Bohemia Food Hub as a nonprofit entity now. And so it's, City of Cottage Grove, I partnered with the city. That was incredibly powerful to be scrappy me, former punk rock anarchist. And now I'm collaborating with the city. I'm partnering with the city on my project. And I'm recognized, and I'm like, we continue to collaborate, the City of Cottage Grove and I, and we are good old, it is good old boys. Like, the entire place, they ran the only woman out last year. And still, it's like, you gotta work with them, right? And so, and I do. And it's like, I'm still me, and I'm still affecting change and doing all these great things, but we're working together. And they can't deny, I'm recognized statewide on this project now. We're really connected. We have a lot of like traction and momentum. They can't deny it. And it took all that for them to like, okay, what you're doing is legitimate. We'll play with you now. But I don't care. Like, to have the buy-in from the city, like, I'm over here doing the thing anyway. They've just routed Main Street to include our project specifically. Like, we are Main Street now. Yeah, for real. So, I mean, just like, is that legit or what? So, now we're like, we can go after some of those dollars that are the Main Street revitalization, this is and that's. But that was a big move, because it's our properties on this, on the other side of the tracks, literally, that have like kind of changed the face of this area. Family Resource Center, the high school, this is like connections to a lot of the Latino folks in town. So making these connections, trying to like identify folks that not only at the high school level, but like mamas that are coming into town from Guatemala that have food business ideas, letting them know, that's a slow game, but letting them know that there is this resource available to them, their support. When you're ready, if you want to have a food business, we can help you. The Small Business Development Center, Rain, Oregon, pointing people in that direction that need the workshops and the business development stuff. I don't want to do that, but we point people in those directions. So we're not trying to cover it all, right? OSU, Sydney and Lauren, Food Hub Network. This group is amazing, right? Oh, hats off, deep bow. Like, being able to connect with others that are doing this work and like ask the questions and help each other, incredibly powerful. Lane County Economic Development, they're on our team. If we need like a quick 5 or 10,000 for such and so, we can lean there. We're established with them. They can like make it happen. Lane Workforce Partnership, they were our fiscal sponsor. They're awesome. South Valley Farmers Network, ooh, Lane County Bounty, Shelley Bowerman. So just like bringing in the farmers, diversifying, like, what does Bohemia Food Hub do? How do we help others? It's farmers, it's online marketplace stuff. We just got the HFFI, which was a federal grant that gives us the refrigerated truck and the big cold storage. How can we help Shelley with online marketplace here in Cottage Grove, expanding to rural? So it's that kind of like This is an asset. This is a community asset. And then our more friends, because I was like, oh, all of the people, it's like my acknowledgement section, but I'm going to go through it. Kristen Penner and all the awesome folks at North Coast. My God, to like collaborate with other folks that are doing this work. Like we've been buddies now. They came and visited, Jared, Kristen, and Lauren, the whole team, all the cool guys came and visited. And we've been friends ever since. And we talk regularly. Like we share and we talk. And like that is part of like the empowerment. Like this isn't just Cottage Grove, Oregon. This is statewide. And like, I think it has more far reaching potential. Oh, did I mention Sydney? Well, I will again, because what a badass. Like Sydney, thank you for, I mean, just like all of that. Okay. And then Business Oregon, Eco Trust in the red, Eugene Stable Business Oregon. I mentioned this before, the ROI is the most amazing program. Like it is funding, last year they funded every applicant, I'm pretty sure. So if you apply for the ROI, Rural Organizing Initiative, you could get $100,000 toward your food hub project. Definitely look it up because all you need is a partner. I partnered the first time with City of Cottage Grove because I was for profit at the time. And I think our first round was $120,000. So, and it's like you could buy equipment with it, you can pay staff with it, et cetera, et cetera. So the ROI was a big, and Business Oregon, big on pushing these kind of projects right now. Okay. The number.
You didn't mention Emma. You didn't mention Emma.
I did too. I did too. Yes, I did, Willie. Yes, I did.
Okay, all right. You don't say Emma, you get in trouble with me. Okay.
Emma, right there. And Maya, because Maya's my girl. She's in.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the numbers. Here we are. Okay. Let's see. Screen sharing is paused. It says stop share. Maybe I'll start again. Go here. Okay, you got it? You got the numbers?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Okay. This was like my biggest big kid moment, like 3-4 years ago, putting my financials together. Like this is when you know that you're, you know, maybe a professional business person almost. It was such a useful exercise for me to actually tell this story with numbers. Let's see. I am not able to scroll down. Is that too small now? There I am. Okay. 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 So I don't know how deep we should go into this. I'm going to make this available for everyone. I think it's really useful. Here's some things that I would focus on. In 2021, I went ahead and I had the month already as a column in there that was just hidden. So I pulled it out so you could see kind of what my rents look like. This story from 2019 to where we are now, where we were about 60,000, and this is where we are now. Blows my mind when I actually because I'm just doing the thing. And then when I actually look at these spreadsheets, I'm like, God, nice job. Like we're really getting it. And it's like, it's working in a really robust and profound way. And like from 2019, I had 2017 in here before, which was hilarious, but these numbers are fine. Like we can kind of get the gist. Unearned revenue, like this is our grant story that's starting to happen. And so 76 was actually our first ROI. And then, and so here we are now at 2022, we're at 277. That's just grant funds. Our earned revenue, this is what we're pulling in rents. So, you know, how I was talking before and pointing to these different rental, these different streams of income, that piece is really important. It could float now on just the kitchen alone, but it doesn't have to. And the project is way more robust with multiple income streams. And so earned revenue, our rents went from 60,000 to this year, they're about 100,000. Our retail storefronts, those were those 2 spaces I showed you. We have a grocery store and a machine shop. Those tenants, I mean, one is related to food, one is unrelated to food. Those are small businesses that I plugged in. They're folks I knew in the community that wanted to start businesses. I basically charged them $300 rent to get started, and their businesses have grown and they're absolutely up and running and pay almost market rents at this point. So everybody is still under market rent, which is kind of my thing. And so, and it helps everybody be successful. So it also creates long-term tenants, right? So like these tenants have been with me for almost 10 years now, and I don't think they're going anywhere. The food trucks, that piece, brand new. One food truck came to me and said, hey, could I park my food truck here? So we took basically an empty lot that we had and developed it into food truck hookup spaces. Now we have six hookups. And I think today we have 4 trucks over there. So we have folks that bring their own trucks and just hook up, and they pay $400, $450 or $500 depending on what they're kind of how they're taxing the space. And so it's just basically to park their own truck. Well, now we have our own truck. We're about to buy another. And those trucks are basically incubator food truck spaces. And so those incubator food truck space, it's like a pay what you can. We help you kind of get yourself up and going. And then you ideally pay, like ultimately $900 is what your rent is. So we help you be able to afford to pay your rental. We just bought another food truck specifically for youth programming. So our work with the high school, really excited to develop a program that basically allows a cohort of high school kids or more cohorts to run a food truck from start to finish, maybe for a year or for a semester, whatever that might look like. So we have programming in some of the trucks, and then we also have some tenants that are just long-term tenants in the food trucks. So those are what those kind of numbers look like. Here's our commercial kitchen space. So we started out with 3 tenants, myself and 2 other tenants. I called them anchor tenants because it was like businesses that were up and moving. They were scaling businesses or accelerating businesses. They were beyond brand new. And that model works super well in your kitchen so that you have some businesses that are like moving. And then you also have, like here, you have some businesses that are just brand new. They're using the kitchen a few hours a week. They're still trying to figure it out. But to have those anchor tenants to kind of like anchor the kitchen allows these kind of like smaller scale tenants to come in and start figuring things out. So right now, this is where we're at. We have 6 kind of up and moving tenants, a couple at these kind of lower scales. And it's like, I think every week I field like another 3 or 4 inquiries into the kitchen. Like, I mean, I think a couple things are going on there. A lot of folks are like being brave about starting food businesses. But the other thing is like our visibility, like echoing back what Adam said, like we are now, like we've professionalized Bohemia Food Hub in a way that like we're visible. I still haven't even like shouted out too loudly that, hey, we've got this like space and this is what it's like, but people know about it and they are knocking on the door. So I imagine by next year, our kitchen tenants will bring in about 60,000, which is double where we were in 2019. So this is like a picture of our Bohemia Food Hub's current rents, where we were bringing in about 60 total combined, and now we're at about 100 and growing. this is a piece like in the works. So, I've only developed half of my building. And so half of it is commercial kitchen. And what we'll develop in the front of the space is micro restaurant storefronts. So we're adding 4 basically incubator restaurant spaces in the front. And so this gives you a picture of like what that brings in as a possibility. Co-working space up, we're developing our 2nd floor. So we're going to put in some offices. Here's what that could bring in. And then we just got the refrigerated delivery truck and cold storage funded with the HFFI. And I have no idea actually what those numbers are. I just threw some numbers in there to show like, this is how we might be able to grow our income annually with just those few additions. Here's our expenses. I'm not going to go through the nitty gritty of this. I had a lease option. I had investors put the money up. They were like, basically my pretend parents is what I call them, because my actual mom is not a wealthy person. So I have pretend parents in Cottage Grove. Not that I'm just exploiting them for their money, but they've been like my dear mom and pop away from home for 20 years. And they believed in my vision, and they put up the capital to buy this property with the idea that I'd build the project and then I'd assume the properties. Right now, this summer, I'm buying them. So I went from a lease with the owners, and now we'll have a mortgage because Kim Johnson will own these properties and will now be the landlord to Bohemia Food Hub. Here's our expenses. They definitely grow, but fortunately our income is growing. And it's not just theoretical numbers, like this has been working. So our net income looks like this. Like that was our story just a few years ago where we weren't in the right direction. And like already this thing is like really, really taking off. And I think it's the diversified income streams. It's also the ecosystem, the current climate, the awareness around food. It's so many variables that like this thing is in the right place at the right time. And so here's the picture of kind of like, this is net. And so it feels like, okay, this thing has traction, this thing is moving, and I feel really proud of it. So that's that.
I just want to say you should be really proud of this. It's pretty phenomenal. And I appreciate your vision, and I appreciate the way you've taken it on one piece at a time. It's pretty spectacular, Kim.
Thank you, Sydney. And I think too, it's like my whole jam has been slow and steady. Like I can't stress enough, like really small bites, and listen to the project and listen to the folks that you're serving, because what Cottage Grove's needs are, the dynamics here that make this story work like this with these numbers and these aspects isn't necessarily what makes a project fly in Klamath Falls or Astoria. Like what is it? It's going to be curious, like for Jared to get that thing up and going. I'm not sure where it is right now, but like to see like what are the elements that are making that one fly, right? Because there's so many parallels. There's another development about to go up in Klamath Falls that's really similar. How will that one fly? So this one's working.
Who has questions for Kim? We've got a few minutes more for Q&A. Did she actually get every single question? I don't believe it.
Well, we had so many questions before, so maybe.
I know. I feel like everybody pieced out on questions, and I just can't believe that that's true.
I know what happened with me though when you guys did the open books. Like I was like, whoa, that's a lot. And I spent a lot of time afterward, like looking at it. It's like more for your reference, like, here you go. And
you'll share this with us, correct? You'll let us.
Sure. Yeah, and I have one more screen I can share. And
okay, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just stepped away and thought I would run back and ask a question that I don't know if you even know, but I just texted one of my producers that wants to use our kitchen, and they want to make juice. And so I told him about the HACCP thing, and he asked if it's difficult. Do you know the process? I mean, I used to teach a food for profit class, and the ODA person would come talk about it. And there was one person that actually didn't end up doing juice because she thought it was a really daunting process. So do you know anything about that process?
Yeah, I mean, I had a tenant that did fruit shrubs. And so that's like a drinking vinegar, but she, she infused vinegar with juice. And so, there's like a whole, it's different than like a fish HACCP. It's a juice HACCP. And so I know with a fish HACCP, I had to get like certified, and I had to take these classes, and it was many, many hours. And then I had to write a plan and things like that. So I can't speak precisely to a juice HACCP, but I do know that she had to manage, like, pest management was a big deal. Like, she had to make sure that there was like established pest management, and this is like the flow of her juice. And like, she had to have a lockable metro rack. And so there was just like, it's specific and I think attainable. But I can't speak as much directly to that as I can to the fish HACCP. Here's another thing. Like, I'm certified, I'm HACCP certified for fish. And so I can like actually write someone else's plan. Like, I'm forever certified, or maybe it's like, I don't know how many years, but I wonder if the same is true with the juice HACCP, that if you find somebody, it's like a needle in a haystack, find somebody that is already juice HACCP, then that person can actually like write the plan and allow the person to get moving along. And then they, with the idea that they'll get certified themselves, like when the next class comes up. For me, it was like the next class wasn't for like another year or something. And so I found somebody that was like HACCP certified and did it that way.
Yeah, I can add to Kim's comments there. Like, we're looking at seafood HACCP and OSU, their seafood lab in Astoria. We're focusing a lot on seafood HACCP. Their strongest admonition is for the producer to actually be involved in writing their actual plan, because they're the ones that are going to have to be monitoring it, doing what they said they're laying out in the plan, like really familiar with the logs, the temperature, kind of all of the nuts and bolts of it. So to be involved in that process, even though it takes time and it can be intimidating, really, if you look at it, especially if you can have someone like Kim that you could maybe like hire as a consultant to just come and be by your side to kind of walk you through those steps and be like, no, you're on the right track. Like, a lot of it is that, just like, it's just documenting the process that you're already doing or that you anticipate to do. And a lot of times, once you get that draft on paper, then you can take it to like OSU Extension. They can review it and be like, okay, here's the holes. But it's so particular to the place that you're doing the processing and your own process for that. So that's what we're learning on the ground, is just kind of trying to like come alongside people to encourage them to do that themselves, or be very active in the writing of the plan is really important.
Yeah, I can add something too. This is Jasmine from Clatskanie. Just like to give somebody some confidence. I mean, Brandon and I, when we first started our food business 2 years ago, we did a HACCP for some freeze-dried bone broth and berries. And we had no experience at all. And we just kind of put ourselves on the line and did it. And yeah, it's confusing, but like, once you get your thoughts down on that plan, then there's just a lot of back and forth and editing that, the extension offices offer. And it's a very supportive process. So it's just intimidating at first. That's what I would say.
+1 to all of that. There's a couple questions going on in the chat that I think could be aired that Caitlin had and Lauren's responding to.
I think these are very like granular type of questions that we don't necessarily need to get in at the end of a long and really detailed and inspiring meeting. I think it's just understanding that HACCP and food safety can be challenging, and you have to like come into it ready to figure it out and how it applies. And sometimes it feels like it costs a lot for the upfront investment. And sometimes that cost is actually all the time it's going to take you. So yes, there can be product testing requirements, and that is a very specific cost that, you know, you may have to incur. So it's very individualized, but I love the idea of having mentors who are making those products, working with you so you understand what you're getting into and you don't just give it up because it sounds terrible.
All right, y'all. Kim, thank you so much. I'm sure you will have many questions lobbed your way after this. Super appreciate the presentation, and I think we all learned a lot. So I'm going to let you go, and let's call it on the Q&A for that. We have a couple of minutes left. Does anybody have anything new and or exciting going on or celebratory going on in their hubs today or recently? Or are we ready to get off this call?
I feel like I'm hogging the time, but we are in the process of opening a commercial kitchen, and I have visited Kim. We went to Hummingbird and checked those out. So I sent out a survey, and originally we had 3 people respond, and then I sent it out again, and we had 17 people, which for Douglas County, that's quite a lot. And we have several anchor tenants, and Kim was like fantastic in answering questions. Like the anchor tenant thing just was essential to our survey and getting our information out. So just lots of food system stuff going on here, but the kitchen is the most exciting for me right now.
That is really exciting. You've been working for a long time to get to a place of having a physical hub environment, and that's thrilling that you've got that now.
Yeah, it just kind of fell into place with the kitchen we found and then equipment from another bakery here that's closing down. So it's kind of, I don't know, perfect timing.
Great. Anyone else with some exciting? Oh, Shelley, I see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this has been really interesting to listen to the tenant conversations. When we started our online marketplace, Lane County Bounty, in 2020, we were able to add a kitchen on as we got our warehouse license. And so we don't have tenants, we don't have the ability of tenants here, but I did just adopt 20 flats of market leftover strawberries from Wintergreen Farm, one of our farm vendors, and we're processing that into jam that'll be under the Lane County Bounty label. So for us, the aggregating wholesale produce from farmers and having those relationships is going to lead us down the path of being able to handle more imperfect produce and things that aren't being sold otherwise, and then using this kitchen to make value-added products under our label. That's really exciting. And also, we did expand our route to Oak Ridge, and that is does have some challenges definitely still, but we have increased our route and are playing with a rural delivery. That's pretty cool.
Excellent. I like the idea of your kind of unique branding, because I think that's something that we're seeing and understanding across the planet, but to have regional, if not local products that come from the vendors and or either farmers that we can kind of branch out to some of the other people in the community. I do have a thought, Kim. I don't know exactly how many folks you have there, but you might want to look at possibly some of your, and I'm looking at through our cameras, but you have a lot of vacant space that as you expand, you might want to take advantage of, which is your walls begin to expand out and make more space available, but you have a whole lot of space on your walls that I know could be opportunities in the near future. But other than that, I really appreciate what you guys are doing in that part of the state.
Thanks, Willie.
Thanks, y'all. We got some updates going into the chat that we'll capture in our notes. And I think we'll take this moment to say goodbye. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It was really great. Kim, gratitude. Have a good one, y'all. See you
Have a
next
good
time.
one.
Everyone.